Hello everybody, today we are going to look at how to use Apple Motion to create special effects in our videos. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So what we just saw was a very basic tooth twinkle, and I'm going to show you how to do that in Apple Motion. So to set up your project, make sure that you have a blank project selected and that you have your frame rate set at 23.98 frames per second and that you have your duration of 1.5 seconds. So your setup should look exactly like I have over here, and away we go. Now at first glance, looking at Apple Motion, this looks incredibly overwhelming, and it can be. And if one were to use Apple Motion, you can create all different kinds of special effects for your video projects. So one just needs to play around with the different replicators and particle emitters, and you really can create some interesting stuff here. But today we're going to do something very basic, and we are going to create a star generator. So make sure you click on Generators and Star, and then in your project you'll just drag this star over into your project. We are actually going to have two stars in this assignment, so I'm going to drag another star over here. They need to be in the same group, so we can delete this one up here. Okay, so I have star 1 and star 2, and I'm going to call this project Star Twinkle, or just Twinkle. Okay, so I have two stars overlaid on top of one another. So the first thing I would like to do, the reason why I have two stars overlaid on top of one another is because I want them to have more of a star sparkle. So I'm going to take the second star and just rotate it a little bit to about 45 degrees. So I have my basic star set up. So from here, this is where you can play around as much as you want with what your star looks like. You just need to make sure that your stars are the same size. So I'm going to click on my star and make sure it's highlighted, and then I'm going to click over to the left on Inspector. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring the radius down a little bit. So I'm going to bring both of the radii on my stars from 19 to 15. Maybe a little bit more than 15. Let's say 13. So I have both stars with a radius of 13. And of course you can change the colors going on with these stars. So I have a mix right now in my second star of purple and my first star of more of like an orangey color that you can see in the background. And there are all sorts of different ways you can play around with what's happening with your star. You can change the spark scale. You can make them really long or short. I'm going to bring my spark scale down to about 8 for star 1, and I'm going to bring star 2 down to about 8 as well. You can play around with the width of your stars, moving these around. You can change the epsilon, which is that how much the stars sparkle out. So I'm going to increase my epsilon for my star on star 2 and on star 1. Again, just make sure that you are replicating your movements. And again, you can just play around with this as much as you want to do. And then when you feel like you have a good final product, that's when the magic begins. Now I'm pretty happy with the look of my star, but we also need to add some behaviors to it. So I've generated a star. So go to Behaviors, Basic Motion, and Spin, and then I'm going to pull this up above my stars. And this will make both stars do the same thing. Now I have my spin selected. I can go back to my inspector, and then here I can play around with the different types of spin. So let's start over here with 360 and see how this looks. I think that keeping it at 360 is probably your best bet. If you change this number too high, your star is going to spin too much, and we don't really want that much. And make sure you keep your axis at Z, because if you change it to X, it's going to do different things like rotate that way, which we don't really want, or if we change it to Y, it would rotate that way. And the Z axis is the axis that we want it to spin, like that. So going back to library, we have our spin. We also want our star to grow. So I'm going to take grow, and I'm going to add it beneath the spin over here. And then we're going to make sure that glow is selected, and we'll go to inspector, and we are going to make it grow. The problem here, however, is that our grow is going to start with our initial point, and we already have our star built at a fairly large size. So what we're actually going to do is take our star values and go down to the inspector over here, and we are going to drop it down, say to about, actually I think maybe 10% is a better starting point. So we're going to bring our scale down to 10%. So you can see our star starts out really small. And now if we go over to our grow, we want this to grow. We want it to grow to more than 100%. Let's make it like 1,000%. There we go. So now it's grown to a nice size. So if we bring our playhead to the very beginning, we can see that star grow nicely. And then again, there's a couple of different scales you can use. Ramp to final value, which makes it grow much quicker. If you do continuous rate, you can change how fast it grows, but I think the best way to go is the natural scale, no, not natural scale, is the ramp to final value, because that has a faster growth. And you want the sparkle to appear fairly quickly. So now we have our spin and our growth. So we can take a look at how this looks. Very nice. But maybe we also want it to fade out as well. So we can go back to our library and go back to our basic motion, and let's find a fade in, fade out. And again, we're going to pull this up over here to the right, along with all our other behaviors. And now with fade selected, we go to our inspector, and we're going to play around with our fade in time. I want my fade in to happen very quickly, so I'm going to pull my fade down. If you look on the right hand side of the page, you can see this bar changing, and that is showing us the ramp from it fading in. Now I'm going to keep this rather small because I want it to appear almost immediately. But I also want my fade out to last a little bit further along the way over here. Maybe it should fade out towards the end. So I'm going to go down to my fade out time, and again, if I make this a little bit smaller, it's going to bring it to fade out towards the end. And there we go. So now I've created a star that grows, spins, fades in and out. And that is our special effect. It's a very basic special effect. It's just a star, but considering how much we can do, this is a very basic thing. Now, we've created a special effect, but we also need to have it appear in our Final Cut Pro. So the way you do this is you go up to File, and, well, first of all, let's convert this to a generator. And you'll see why this is important in a moment. So we've saved it as a generator. Now we are going to save it. And I'm going to call this Sparkle. And we are going to save it under a new category. And I want you to name your category for whatever class you're in. So 4A is the first group to see this, so I'm going to save it as 4A. But of course, if you are 7B, you can call it 7B. I'm going to call mine 4A for now. Create. So what I've done now is I've created a generator of a star that grows, fades in and out, and spins. And I'm going to use this on our project. So let's go over to Final Cut Pro and see how that looks. Okay, so here we are in Final Cut Pro. I've got a picture of Beyonce pulled up, and I would like for her tooth to sparkle. So I'm going to pull my playhead over just a little bit, and now I'm going to insert the sparkle. So the reason why we wanted to save it as a generator is because if you go over onto the generator section of your Final Cut Pro, you'll see the new folder that you created, either 4A or 7A, will appear in your Final Cut Pro, and the sparkle that you created will also show up here. And look how beautiful that is. So I'm going to drag this down, and I'm going to drop it right where I left my playhead. But now, of course, it just appears in the middle of the screen. So we need to transform this and drag it over to one of her teeth. Let's put it up over here. And of course, we also want to have a sound effect that goes along with this. Now, typically, you could use one of the sound effects that are in Final Cut Pro already. But I would prefer you to use the one that I have given you, because I don't want you to spend too much time digging through all of these sound effects that we have here. Also in our share drive, if you go to stock footage, you will find Sony Pictures sound effects series, and there are a whole lot of sound effects in here. But again, I'm just going to give you one to use because that is going to be the easiest thing for us to do at this point. So I'm going to take this lo-fi chime, I'm going to put it right here below the image. Our audio is always at the bottom. And let's see how this looks. And that's it. So you're just very basically creating a special effect, which you are then going to import into Final Cut Pro and place it into an image along with your audio, and it will come across very simply like that. Alright everyone, this was a complicated but overall, in the end, not particularly difficult thing to create. We just made a basic star that grows, spins, and fades out. If you want to get really creative, I'm sure that there's lots of things that we can develop in the future. But for today, that's all we're doing. So good luck, everyone.